By the time Nathan Carter saw his mother's ring on a stranger's finger, the church organ had already begun to play. His bride was waiting at the altar. Guests had risen from their seats. The florist had spent all morning arranging white roses near the front pews. And yet none of those things were what made him stop walking. It was the ring. A thin gold band with a tiny sapphire no larger than a grain of rice. Worn. Scratched. Ordinary to anyone else. Impossible for him to forget. Some objects don't become valuable because of what they're worth. They become valuable because of whose hands once carried them. The woman wearing it stood outside the church gates. She sat quietly on a bench beneath an old maple tree, holding a paper cup between weathered hands. Most people walking past her didn't look twice. Life has a way of teaching us to ignore certain kinds of sadness. Especially the quiet kind. Nathan stopped so suddenly that his best man nearly walked into him. "Everything okay?" asked Daniel. Nathan didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the ring. Because there are moments when memory moves faster than reason. And in those moments, the heart recognizes what the mind hasn't yet accepted. The ring caught the afternoon sunlight. A small sapphire. A tiny scratch near the edge. The scratch. His chest tightened. He knew that scratch. 40 years earlier, when he was 7 years old, he had dropped his mother's ring into the kitchen sink while pretending it was buried treasure. The gold had struck the faucet on the way down. His mother had laughed. Not because the ring was damaged. Because he looked so frightened. Some memories survive longer than photographs. The church bells rang once. Then twice. Inside, nearly 200 guests waited for the ceremony to begin. Outside, Nathan Carter stood frozen like a man who had suddenly found a doorway into the past. The strange thing about grief is that it doesn't leave. It simply learns to sit quietly until something invites it back. The woman on the bench looked to be in her late 60s. Her coat was too thin for October. A faded gray wool coat with frayed sleeves. Beside her sat a canvas bag worn soft from years of carrying too much and owning too little. She wasn't asking for money. Wasn't speaking. Wasn't looking at anyone. She simply sat there as leaves drifted across the sidewalk. Sometimes loneliness doesn't announce itself. It just takes a seat beside you. Nathan's mother had died 14 years earlier. Breast cancer. By the time doctors discovered it, there wasn't much left to fight. He still remembered cleaning out her kitchen afterward. The blue ceramic cookie jar. The recipe cards tied with string. The coffee mug she used every morning. He had donated most of it. At the time, it seemed practical. Age teaches us that practical decisions often become emotional regrets. There was one thing he never found. The ring. His mother's ring. She wore it every day after his father passed away. Not because it was expensive. Because his father had bought it with his first paycheck after returning from Vietnam. She once told him. "Your father couldn't afford diamonds, so he bought me something blue instead." Then she'd smiled. Blue lasts longer than fashion. Nathan swallowed hard. The woman adjusted her hand around the paper cup. The ring caught the light again. No. It couldn't be. Could it? Inside the church, the music changed. His fiancée, Emily, was likely standing in the bridal room upstairs. Probably checking her veil one last time. Probably wondering why the ceremony hadn't started. Weddings have a strange way of making people think about beginnings. But sometimes beginnings accidentally uncover endings that were never properly understood. At this point, perhaps I should tell you something. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 67 years old, retired from teaching third grade for more years than I'd like to count, and I live in a quiet town outside Indianapolis. I've learned something over the years. People often believe life changes in dramatic moments. But that's rarely true. Most lives change because someone notices a detail everyone else ignored. And for Nathan Carter, that detail was resting quietly on a stranger's finger. "Nathan?" Daniel asked again. "We should go inside." Nathan finally blinked. The church entrance stood less than 20 feet away. The life he'd planned waited inside. The life he didn't understand sat outside. He loosened his tie. His heartbeat had become uneven. Not from cold feet. This wasn't about marriage. At least not yet. This was about memory. And memory has a way of pulling us backward before allowing us to move forward. "I'll be right back," Nathan said quietly. Daniel stared. "Right back? Your wedding starts in 3 minutes." Nathan nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was doing. Truth often begins with small acts of curiosity. He walked slowly toward the bench. The woman looked up as his shadow crossed the pavement. Her eyes were pale blue. Tired eyes. Not unfriendly. Just tired. The kind of eyes that have spent years expecting people to walk past. Nathan stopped a few feet away. Up close, the ring looked even more familiar. His chest tightened. There it was. The scratch. Exactly where he remembered. For a moment, he almost turned away. People make mistakes when emotions outrun facts. Age teaches patience. But grief rarely listens. The woman noticed him looking at her hand. Instinctively, she lowered it. Not defensive. Protective. As though the ring belonged to a life she was trying to preserve. "Excuse me," Nathan said gently. His voice sounded unfamiliar to his own ears. He pointed toward her hand. "May I ask where you got that ring?" The woman's expression changed. Not fear. Not surprise. Something quieter. Something older. She looked down at the sapphire. Then back at him. Her fingers tightened around the paper cup. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The leaves moved. Cars passed. Inside the church, the organ played on. Sometimes silence reveals more than words. Finally, the woman whispered. "It belonged to my daughter." Nathan's breath caught. Because his mother had never had a daughter. And yet, something in the woman's voice made him feel that the story wasn't over. Not even close. The wedding could wait. Some truths arrive late. But they arrive all the same. And neither of them knew it yet. But the ring had not only survived 14 years. It had been carrying a secret for nearly 40. "It belonged to my daughter." The words settled between them like autumn leaves. Quiet. Fragile. Easy to miss if one wasn't paying attention. Nathan looked at the woman more carefully. Up close, she seemed older than he had first thought. Not because of wrinkles. Wrinkles come for all of us. No. It was the kind of age that comes from carrying too much for too long. Her coat had been mended near the cuffs. The canvas bag beside her had been stitched more than once. People who repair things usually know what it's like to lose them. Nathan glanced down at the ring again. The tiny scratch was still there. Exactly where it had always been. His mother's ring. Or perhaps a ring exactly like it. Memory can be a faithful friend. It can also be a persuasive liar. "I hope you don't mind me asking," Nathan said gently. "How long have you had it?" The woman lowered her gaze to her hand. For a moment, she ran her thumb across the sapphire. The way people touch objects that carry stories. "About 15 years. 15 years. Nathan's mother had died 14 years ago. His chest tightened. Close. Too close. Inside the church, muffled music drifted through the stone walls. The wedding procession had likely stopped by now. Emily would be wondering where he was. And she would have every right to. Life teaches strange lessons. One of them is this. Two important moments rarely ask permission before arriving at the same time. The woman adjusted the paper cup in her hands. There was no coffee left inside. Only warmth long since gone. My daughter gave it to me before she passed, she said quietly. Passed. Not left. Not disappeared. Passed. Older people often choose softer words for harder truths. Not because they're avoiding pain. Because they've learned pain doesn't become lighter by naming it differently. Nathan swallowed. I'm sorry. The woman gave a faint smile. The kind people wear when they've repeated their grief often enough that it no longer surprises others. Thank you. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Cars moved along Maple Street. A child laughed somewhere across the road. The world continued. It always does. Even when someone's world has stopped. I've noticed something over the years, my friends. Loss changes how people carry ordinary objects. A wedding ring. A recipe card. An old jacket hanging in a closet. After enough years, these things stop being objects. They become witnesses. Nathan thought of his mother's kitchen. The pale yellow curtains she refused to replace. The cookie tin she kept on top of the refrigerator. The wooden spoon with the burned handle. She used it every Sunday making chicken soup. He still had that spoon in a drawer at home. Though he hadn't opened the drawer in years. Sometimes grief doesn't hide in cemeteries. Sometimes it waits quietly in kitchen cabinets. Your daughter. Nathan began carefully. What was her name? The woman's expression softened. Grace. The name lingered in the air. Grace. Simple. Gentle. His mother had always liked that name. She once told him that names carry hopes. And every parent names a child with dreams they cannot yet see. When did she pass away? Nathan asked. The woman hesitated. Not all memories open easily. Some have rusted shut from too many years of silence. 4 years ago. Nathan nodded. Cancer, perhaps. Or an accident. At their age, there were too many possibilities. He almost asked another question. Then stopped. Curiosity and kindness do not always walk at the same pace. The woman looked at the church. White stone. Flower arrangements near the entrance. Guests occasionally peeking outside. Her eyes rested on Nathan's suit. Then his boutonniere. Realization crossed her face. Not dramatic. Just quiet understanding. You're getting married. Nathan glanced toward the church doors. His stomach tightened. Yes. The woman smiled. A real smile this time. Small. Warm. The kind mothers give strangers. Your bride must be waiting. He almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was true. Emily had been waiting for many things lately. The wedding. The house they'd bought last spring. The future they'd carefully planned. Emily loved plans. Nathan admired that about her. His own mother had once said. Marry someone who plants flowers for next season. Emily planted flowers. Literally. The small garden behind their house bloomed every spring because of her. Funny how love often begins in small habits. The woman noticed him staring at the ring again. Her fingers instinctively covered it. Protective. As though she had learned that precious things disappear when left unguarded. I know that look, she said softly. Nathan blinked. What look? The look people get when they recognize something from another life. Her voice carried no accusation. Only understanding. That surprised him. People who have suffered often recognize suffering in others. Even when it hides behind expensive suits and polished shoes. He took a breath. Carefully. My mother had a ring very much like yours. The woman remained still. The leaves shifted beneath the bench. A church bell sounded again. Late. He was already late. But some moments ask to be listened to before they can be understood. My father bought it in 1969, Nathan continued. After returning from Vietnam. The woman's hand froze. Only slightly. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Teachers notice small things. And perhaps age teaches the same skill. She looked down at the sapphire. Not at him. At the ring. Her voice grew quieter. That would have been around the same time. Nathan felt something move inside him. Not certainty. Something softer. The beginning of it. The woman carefully removed the ring from her finger. The gold looked older in her palm. Older than both of them somehow. Years leave marks on metal the same way they leave marks on people. She turned it over. And for the first time, Nathan saw something he had never noticed before. Tiny letters engraved inside the band. Almost worn away. His breath caught. Because his father's initials had been engraved there. By hand. In a jewelry store long gone from downtown Indianapolis. He remembered because his mother used to let him trace them with his finger when he was little. The woman held the ring toward him. These letters, she whispered. I never knew what they meant. Nathan stared. The initials were still there. Faint. But unmistakable. JC to MC. James Carter. And Mary Carter. His parents. His heart stopped. Inside the church, the music suddenly fell silent. And somewhere beyond those doors, his bride was waiting. But outside, beneath an old maple tree, the past had just opened its eyes. JC to MC. James Carter. Mary Carter. Nathan stared at the tiny engraving inside the ring. The world seemed to narrow. Not disappear. Just narrow. Until there was only gold. 2 initials. And 40 years of memory. His mother used to polish that ring every Christmas. Not because it was expensive. Because she believed care was another way of saying love. She'd sit at the kitchen table with a soft cloth while cinnamon cookies baked in the oven. The house would smell like vanilla and pine. His father would pretend to complain about Christmas music starting too early. And his mother would smile without looking up. Some memories don't fade. They simply wait for an object to unlock them. Nathan's throat tightened. There was no mistake. This was his mother's ring. The same ring that had vanished after her funeral 14 years earlier. The same ring he had searched for while cleaning out her home. The same ring his younger sister, Claire, had cried over when they couldn't find it. His heart began to race. Not from anger. From confusion. Because valuable things disappear in many ways. Sometimes through theft. Sometimes through loss. And sometimes through stories we don't yet understand. The woman watched him quietly. She didn't pull the ring away. Didn't hide it. People who carry grief long enough often stop defending themselves. They grow tired. Very tired. You know these names? She asked softly. Nathan looked up. His eyes had become wet before he even realized it. Those are my parents. The woman's face changed. Not fear. Not guilt. Something heavier. The kind of expression people wear when old memories return unexpectedly. Her fingers tightened around the ring. Only slightly. Enough for someone paying attention to notice. And teachers notice small things. Life teaches the same skill eventually. My parents owned this ring, Nathan continued quietly. It disappeared years ago. The woman lowered her eyes. The leaves moved around their feet. Some drifted across the church steps. October in Indiana has a way of making everything look beautiful. Even difficult moments. Especially difficult moments. Because nature doesn't hide change. It simply accepts it. Inside the church, someone opened the doors. A guest peeked outside. Then another. Weddings run on schedules. Life rarely does. Nathan heard his phone vibrate. Once. Twice. 3 times. Emily. He didn't answer. Not because he didn't care. Because some moments ask to be understood before they can be explained. I've noticed something after 67 years, my friends. The hardest choices in life are rarely between right and wrong. More often, they're between 2 people we love. And no matter what we choose, someone waits. The woman looked at the ring again. Her thumb moved across the worn gold. The same way his mother used to. Almost unconsciously. As if memory had its own language. My daughter Grace gave it to me, she said. Her voice was calm. Not defensive. People telling the truth often sound different. Not louder. Simpler. She told me it belonged to someone who once saved her life. Nathan blinked. Saved her life? The words settled quietly. Like snow before a storm. What do you mean? He asked. The woman looked toward the church. Perhaps giving him one last chance to walk away. Or perhaps giving herself one. People who carry secrets often know their weight better than anyone. Her name was Grace Miller, she said. She passed 4 years ago. Nathan nodded slowly. The name meant nothing to him. Yet. Sometimes stories introduce names long before they reveal their meaning. My daughter spent several years working at St. Vincent Hospital in Indianapolis. Hospital. The word struck something faint inside him. Not memory. Not yet. Only recognition. The kind that sits quietly at the edge of understanding. The woman continued. Before she died, she gave me this ring and said if I ever met a man named Nathan Carter, should return it. Nathan stopped breathing. Not literally. But close enough. His own name sounded strange in a stranger's mouth. Especially on his wedding day. Especially from someone sitting outside a church. She knew my name? The woman nodded. Slowly. Carefully. As though every word carried years behind it. She said one day he'd come looking for answers. Answers. Funny word. Most people spend their lives believing they want answers. What they truly want is comfort. And the two are not always the same thing. Nathan stared at her. The church doors opened again. This time it was Daniel. His best man. And oldest friend. Daniel looked worried. Not annoyed. Worried. Friendship changes with age. Young men protect adventures. Older men protect one another. Nathan, Daniel called softly. Emily's asking for you. Nathan looked toward the church. White flowers. Family. Music. The future. Then he looked back at the bench. At the ring. At a story that had somehow survived 14 years. Life has a strange sense of timing. Some truths wait until we're finally ready to hear them. Or perhaps until we can no longer avoid them. The woman reached into her canvas bag. It was old. Faded blue. The kind of bag people keep for years because replacing it seems unnecessary. She carefully removed a small envelope. Yellowed. Worn. Sealed. His name was written on the front. Nathan Carter. The handwriting wasn't his mother's. Nor his father's. The letters were careful. Deliberate. As though written by someone who understood the weight of words. His hands trembled slightly. The woman held it out. Grace told me to wait until your wedding day. Nathan stared. His wedding day. Not someday. Today. Specifically today. A chill moved through him despite the autumn sun. Some promises survive longer than the people who make them. He looked at the envelope. Then at the church. Inside stood Emily. Waiting in her white dress. Believing she knew how this day would unfold. Outside sat a stranger carrying a letter from the dead. And between those two worlds stood Nathan Carter. A son. A groom. A man about to learn that families sometimes keep secrets not because they want to deceive, but because they hope to protect. The problem is this. Protection and silence often look identical until many years later. Nathan reached for the envelope. His fingers brushed the paper. And at that exact moment, the church bells began to ring. Not for the wedding, but noon. The hour his mother used to call, the time truth likes to arrive. He had always thought she was joking. Now he wasn't so sure. Nathan held the envelope but didn't open it. Not yet. Some moments deserve caution. Others demand it. The paper felt brittle beneath his fingers. Old. The kind of old that comes from years spent waiting in drawers and boxes while life moves on without it. His name was written neatly across the front. Nathan Carter. No address. No date. Just his name. As though whoever wrote it knew that one day it would find him. Objects travel in strange ways. A ring. A letter. A recipe card tucked inside a cookbook. Sometimes they outlive the people who once held them. And sometimes they carry unfinished stories with them. Nathan. Daniel's voice was closer now. His friend had walked down the church steps and stopped a few feet away. Not pushing. Just waiting. Good friends learn that not every silence needs to be filled. Emily had once told Nathan that Daniel was the kind of man who would help you move a couch without asking questions. Age teaches us that reliability is often more valuable than charm. Nathan looked up. Inside the church, guests had begun whispering. People shifted in pews. A flower girl sat swinging her legs impatiently. Life rarely pauses simply because our hearts do. I'm fine, Nathan said. Though even he wasn't sure that was true. The woman on the bench remained quiet. Her hands rested in her lap now. Empty. Without the ring. Without the envelope. As though she had spent years carrying burdens that no longer belonged to her. There are people who spend their lives holding on to other people's promises. Not because they want to. Because someone asked them to. And sometimes love is simply keeping a promise long after it becomes inconvenient. Nathan turned the envelope over. Sealed. Unopened. The edges had yellowed with time. A faint crease ran across one corner. Someone had carried it for years. Carefully. The woman noticed him studying it. Grace kept it in her nightstand. Her voice was soft. Steady. My daughter wasn't someone who held on to many things. She smiled faintly. She always said clutter made it harder to breathe. Nathan nodded. His mother had been the opposite. Mary Carter saved everything. Birthday cards. School drawings. Old report cards. After her death, he found a crayon picture he'd made in second grade. A stick figure family holding hands beneath a crooked sun. His mother had kept it for 30 years. Parents store time differently. Children grow up thinking memories live in their heads. Parents often keep them in boxes. The church doors opened again. This time, it was his sister. Claire. 51 years old. Sharp-eyed. Practical. The kind of woman who always carried tissues in her purse because someone eventually needed one. She spotted Nathan. Then the woman on the bench. Then the envelope. Her expression changed immediately. Not anger. Concern. Siblings develop a language of glances long before adulthood. What happened? Claire asked quietly. Nathan looked at her. Then slowly held up the ring. Her face went pale. Not dramatically. Just enough. The way faces change when memory arrives uninvited. Claire took a small step forward. The ring. 2 words. Barely above a whisper. She didn't ask. She knew. Of all the things missing after their mother's funeral, the ring had hurt her most. Not because of its value. Because she remembered the last time their mother wore it. Hospitals have a way of turning ordinary objects into sacred ones. Claire had sat beside their mother's bed during her final week. The 4 machines hummed quietly. The television stayed muted. Their mother wasn't strong enough to watch. Only strong enough to listen. On the last evening, Mary Carter had removed the ring. Just once. She placed it on the bedside table before sleeping. The next morning, it was gone. They searched everywhere. Drawers. Linens. Nurses' stations. Nothing. The hospital apologized. No answers ever came. Some losses are large enough to receive investigations. Others simply become mysteries. And mysteries have a way of aging alongside us. Claire looked at the woman. The woman looked back calmly. Not defensive. Only tired. Very tired. Where did you get it? Claire asked. Nathan almost interrupted. But he didn't. Grief belongs differently to each person. His sister had loved their mother in her own way. Quietly. Faithfully. The woman folded her hands together. My daughter worked at St. Vincent Hospital. Hospital. The word landed differently this time. Like a puzzle piece finding its place. Nathan's chest tightened. St. Vincent. His mother had spent her final weeks there. The same hospital. The same year. The same ring. Coincidences exist. But age teaches us something uncomfortable. There are fewer coincidences in life than we often hope. Claire's face softened. Not because she understood. Because she was beginning to. There's a difference. The woman took a breath. My daughter was a nurse. Nurse. The word lingered. People trust nurses with things they don't tell anyone else. Fear. Regret. Last wishes. Hospitals witness more truths than most places ever will. Nathan looked at the envelope again. His heart had become strangely calm. Not peaceful. Steady. The kind of steadiness that comes right before life changes. I've learned something after all these years, my friends. The truth rarely arrives as a thunderstorm. More often, it arrives quietly. An old photograph. A forgotten receipt. A ring on the wrong hand. Nathan slipped his thumb beneath the seal. Then stopped. Inside the church waited Emily. His future. Outside sat 14 years of unanswered questions. Both mattered. Both deserved honesty. He looked at Daniel. Then Claire. Then the woman whose name he still didn't know. Finally, he took out his phone. Emily answered on the second ring. Her voice was gentle. But worried. Nathan? He closed his eyes. Sometimes love isn't measured by how loudly someone reacts. But by how quietly they wait. Emily, he said softly. His voice trembled for the first time all day. I need a little more time. Silence. Just for a moment. Then Emily asked the question that told him exactly why he was marrying her. Not. What are you doing? Not. Where are you? But simply. Is someone hurting? Nathan looked at the ring. At the envelope. At a stranger carrying part of his mother's story. His throat tightened. Maybe someone has been hurting for a very long time. Emily didn't answer immediately. Then she said quietly. Then find out why. And sometimes, my friends, love doesn't pull us away from the truth. It walks beside us while we search for it. Nathan ended the call. Looked down at the envelope once more. And finally. He broke the seal. Nathan slid a finger beneath the seal. The paper gave way with a soft crackle. Old paper sounds different. More delicate. As though time itself has made it fragile. The church bells had long since fallen silent. Inside, guests waited. Outside, October's sunlight filtered through the maple leaves above the bench. Life has an unusual habit of placing ordinary beauty beside extraordinary moments. Nathan unfolded the letter carefully. The handwriting was neat. Steady. The kind of handwriting people develop before texting replaced penmanship. At the bottom of the page, he immediately saw a signature. Grace Miller. His breath caught. This letter had been written by a woman he'd never met. A woman who somehow knew his name. A woman who had protected his mother's ring for 14 years. And perhaps something more. Beside him, Claire stood quietly. Daniel remained near the church steps, giving his friend space. Good friends understand that some journeys can only be walked alone. The woman on the bench lowered her eyes. She had done her part. The rest belonged to the past. Nathan began reading. Dear Nathan Carter. If you are reading this, then your mother's ring has finally found its way home. For many years, I wasn't sure whether I should write this letter. But some promises become heavier with time, not lighter. Nathan's chest tightened. Promises. There was that word again. Life is built on promises. Families even more so. And broken promises often leave the deepest scars. He continued reading. I was a nurse at St. Vincent Hospital in Indianapolis. In the spring of 2010, I cared for your mother during her final weeks. Nathan froze. Spring of 2010. His mother's final illness. The hospital room came rushing back. The soft humming of machines. The scent of antiseptic. The pale blue blankets. He remembered sitting beside her bed while she slept. He remembered pretending to be strong. Parents spend years protecting children. And then one day, children discover there are some things they cannot protect their parents from. Claire quietly wiped her eyes. She remembered too. Grief changes shape with time. But it never fully disappears. Nathan looked down and kept reading. Your mother spoke about you often. Nathan always forgets to buy enough charcoal for summer barbecues, she told me once. But he always remembers to call me every Sunday. Nathan closed his eyes. His mother used to tease him about that. Every 4th of July. Every summer. Some voices remain so vivid that age cannot soften them. I've learned something as a teacher and as a mother, my friends. We often think we remember grand moments. But in truth, what stays with us are the ordinary things. The coffee mugs. The recipes. The phone calls every Sunday afternoon. Love lives in repetition. Nathan swallowed hard. His hands trembled slightly. He kept reading. 3 days before she passed away, your mother asked me for a favor. One I never forgot. The world seemed quieter. Even the traffic nearby felt distant. Nathan's heartbeat slowed. Not because he was calm. Because something inside him already knew. Knew that whatever came next had been waiting 14 years to be heard. Grace, your mother said, if my son ever loses his way, give him this ring. Nathan stopped. Loses his way. The words settled heavily. His mother had always spoken carefully. Never dramatic. Never careless. She believed words mattered. Teachers understand that. Parents do too. Claire looked at him. Neither of them spoke. Some sentences need room to breathe. Nathan read on. She told me the ring was never about money. It reminds people of who they are, she said. And sometimes we all need reminding. A breeze stirred the leaves. The ring sat in Nathan's palm now. Warm from his hand. Worn smooth by decades of love. His father had given it to Mary Carter in 1969. After returning from Vietnam. His mother had worn it through 50 years of life. Marriage. Parenthood. Illness. Loss. Objects witness entire lifetimes. Sometimes better than people do. Nathan thought about his own life. 47 years old. Successful architect. A beautiful fiancée. A new home in Carmel. A wedding waiting inside the church. By every measure, life looked complete. And yet, why had his mother written, "If my son ever loses his way"? He wasn't lost. Was he? Age teaches strange lessons. Sometimes we don't realize we're lost because we've become very good at walking familiar roads. He continued reading. There is one thing your mother asked me never to tell you unless the right day came. She believed people should learn certain truths only when their hearts are ready. Nathan's breath caught. Claire stiffened beside him. Even Daniel looked up from the church entrance. Truth has weight. And somehow people feel it before they hear it. Nathan turned the page. His pulse quickened. The ring did not disappear from the hospital. Your mother gave it away willingly. He blinked. No. That couldn't be right. His mother had loved that ring. They had searched for it. Filed reports. Asked nurses. Spent months wondering. Mary Carter had never said a word. Not one. Not even during her final days. People carry secrets for many reasons. Not all secrets come from fear. Sometimes they come from love. Sometimes from regret. And sometimes from hope. Nathan kept reading. The night before she passed away, your mother asked to see me privately. Grace, she said, there's a woman in room 412 who has no family. Nathan frowned. Room 412? He remembered room numbers. Hospitals have a way of engraving details into memory. His mother had been in room 408. Just down the hall. He read on. She's dying alone, your mother told me. And no one should leave this world believing they were forgotten. Nathan felt his throat tighten. That sounded exactly like his mother. Mary Carter had once mailed Christmas cards to 3 widows from church every year. Not because anyone asked her to. Because kindness was simply who she was. The letter trembled in his hand. And then he reached the final paragraph. The one written in darker ink. As though added later. His eyes widened. Because the last line read. Nathan, the woman in room 412 wasn't a stranger. She was your father's first love. The woman in room 412 wasn't a stranger. She was your father's first love. Nathan stared at the words. Read them again. Then once more. Sometimes the mind reads faster than the heart can accept. His father had been gone for 22 years. A heart attack at 68. Quick. Unexpected. The kind of loss that leaves unfinished conversations behind. James Carter had been a good man. Steady. Dependable. The sort of father who showed up early for Little League games and stayed late to help clean up. The sort of husband who brought home flowers from the grocery store for no reason at all. Nathan had spent his life believing he knew his parents' story. Perhaps that is one of the quiet illusions of adulthood. We assume our parents began existing the day we entered the world. Age teaches otherwise. Every parent was once young. Every parent had dreams. And sometimes, they had unfinished chapters too. Claire gently touched Nathan's arm. What does it mean? Her voice was soft. Not demanding. Just uncertain. Nathan shook his head slowly. He didn't know. Not yet. He looked back at the letter. There was more. Grace had written several paragraphs beneath those words. The handwriting seemed slightly different. Perhaps written on another day. Or after difficult reflection. Time leaves marks on paper the same way it leaves marks on people. He continued reading. Her name was Evelyn Harper. Your mother asked me to visit her after visiting hours because she had grown too weak to walk down the hall herself. Evelyn Harper. The name meant nothing to Nathan. But names have strange ways of becoming important very quickly. Especially names we should have known all along. He read further. I expected resentment. Your mother surprised me. She asked me to brush Evelyn's hair. Nathan's throat tightened. Brush her hair. Such a small act. And yet some acts carry the weight of grace. His mother had always believed dignity lived in ordinary gestures. Folding laundry neatly. Setting an extra place at the table. Holding someone's hand in silence. Love rarely announces itself loudly. Most often, it appears in small habits repeated over many years. Nathan remembered being 8 years old with chickenpox. His mother sitting beside him through the night. Changing cool washcloths. Reading stories. Humming softly when fever made sleep difficult. Children rarely notice sacrifice while it's happening. Only years later do they understand how much love costs. The breeze stirred the pages. Leaves drifted across the church lawn. Inside, guests were still waiting. Some were likely checking their watches. Others whispering explanations to one another. Life rarely pauses while truth unfolds. Daniel remained near the steps. Loyal as always. Not interfering. Just standing nearby. Friendship often looks like waiting. Nathan read on. Evelyn cried when she saw your mother's ring. James always said blues suited Mary better than diamonds, she whispered. Nathan froze. His father had said that exact sentence. Word for word. Every anniversary. Every Christmas. His chest tightened. Only someone close to his father would know that. Very close. Claire covered her mouth. The same realization had reached her too. Truth has a way of arriving at different hearts at the same moment. Nathan kept reading. Your mother sat beside Evelyn's bed for nearly an hour. The two women spoke quietly. I remained outside the room. Some conversations belong only to those who lived them. The words lingered. Nathan tried to picture it. His mother. Weak. Dying. Still choosing to visit another patient. Still choosing kindness. People reveal their character most clearly when they have little left to gain. Mary Carter had always chosen kindness. Not perfectly. No one does. But consistently. And consistency is often what shapes a life. I've noticed something over the years, my friends. The people we admire most are rarely the loudest. Usually, they're the ones who continue choosing kindness when life has given them every reason not to. Nathan swallowed hard. His eyes moved lower. And then he reached the part that changed everything. Afterward, your mother called me back into the room. Grace, she said, there are some burdens that should not be inherited. But there are some truths that deserve a home. Nathan's breathing slowed. His mother had always spoken like that. Not in speeches. Just small sentences. The kind that stayed with you long after she was gone. He still remembered her telling him once. A good life isn't measured by what you keep. It's measured by what you leave behind. At the time, he'd been 16. More interested in basketball than wisdom. Age has a curious sense of humor. It often teaches us the meaning of our parents' words decades later. He read the next lines. And the world shifted again. Your mother removed her ring and placed it in Evelyn's hand. She loved him before I did, Mary said. And she's leaving this world alone. Nathan closed his eyes. His mother had given away the ring. Willingly. Not because she stopped loving his father. Because she understood loneliness. There are some people who carry compassion like second nature. Mary Carter had been one of them. Claire wiped tears from her cheeks. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. The kind grief leaves behind years later. Nathan remembered the last Christmas before his mother's diagnosis. She had insisted on delivering cookies to 3 widows from church during a snowstorm. His father had laughed. Mary had simply shrugged and said, "Nobody should feel forgotten in December." That had been his mother. Always. Thinking of others. Even when life wasn't easy. The letter continued. "Evelyn passed away 3 days after your mother. Before she died, she asked me to keep the ring safe until the right time. She believed one day you would need to know the truth about your father." Nathan's heart stopped. The truth. Not a truth. The truth. Singular. Heavy. Final. He looked up from the paper. The church doors stood open. Inside waited his future. Outside sat his past. And somewhere between those two places, his father had left behind a story no one had ever told. Nathan lowered his eyes to the final line on the page. His hands began to tremble. Because beneath Grace's signature was a single sentence written in different ink. Perhaps added years later. Perhaps after Grace herself learned something new. The sentence read, "Your father never stopped writing to Evelyn. Your father never stopped writing to Evelyn." Nathan read the sentence twice. Then a third time. The words refused to settle. His father? James Carter? The same man who brought his wife coffee every morning for 37 years? The same man who kissed Mary goodbye before work? The same man who never missed an anniversary? Some truths don't arrive as answers. They arrive as contradictions. And contradictions have a way of forcing us to reconsider everything we thought we knew. Claire slowly lowered herself onto the church steps. Her face had gone pale. Not because she was angry. Because memory had suddenly become uncertain. She looked exactly like their mother when she worried. The same furrow between the brows. The same habit of folding her hands. Children carry their parents in ways mirrors cannot measure. "Nathan," she whispered. "Did Dad have another family?" The question lingered. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Human. Nathan didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to. Because he couldn't. There are moments in life when silence isn't avoidance. It's honesty. He looked back at the letter. His hands trembled slightly. The autumn wind moved through the maple branches above them. Leaves drifted across the church lawn. Inside, guests were still waiting. Outside, decades were quietly unfolding. Life doesn't always reveal itself in order. Sometimes chapter 30 explains chapter 3. And by then, we're old enough to understand what we were too young to see. Nathan continued reading. "Please understand this before you judge your father. Love is rarely as simple as people imagine." He stopped. The sentence felt familiar. Not because he'd heard it before. Because age teaches it eventually. When we're young, we think life follows straight lines. You meet. You marry. You build a life. But life is rarely drawn with rulers. It curves. It circles back. Sometimes it asks impossible things from ordinary people. I've learned something after many years of teaching children and raising my own. People are rarely entirely good or entirely wrong. Most of us are simply trying our best with the hearts we have at the time. Nathan took a slow breath and continued. "Your father and Evelyn Harper grew up together in Martinsville. They planned to marry after he returned from Vietnam." Martinsville. The small Indiana town where his father had been born. Nathan remembered summer visits to his grandparents' farm. The scent of cut hay. Fireflies in July. Old black and white photographs hanging in the hallway. There had been pictures of young men in uniforms. Smiling girls in dresses. Faces he barely remembered. Perhaps one of those faces had been Evelyn. Memory has strange hiding places. He read on. But war changes people. And sometimes it changes timing too. Nathan swallowed. His father rarely spoke about Vietnam. Never in detail. Only once, when Nathan was 12, had he asked. His father had stared out at the backyard for a long moment. Then quietly said, "Some places stay with you longer than you stay with them." That was all. Nathan never asked again. Many men from that generation carried their pain in silence. Not because they didn't hurt. Because they had been taught not to show it. The letter continued. When James returned home, he wasn't the same young man who had left. Neither was Evelyn. The breeze shifted. The woman on the bench sat quietly nearby. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. No longer carrying the ring. No longer carrying the secret. People spend years protecting stories that don't belong to them. And when they finally let go, they often look lighter. Nathan continued reading. Evelyn had become engaged to another man. James was heartbroken. Months later, he met your mother at church. Nathan closed his eyes. Church. Of course. His parents had met at First Methodist. His mother taught Sunday school there for years. The same church where his wedding was now waiting. Funny how life enjoys making circles. He remembered hearing that story as a child. Dad noticed Mom carrying too many casserole dishes after a church supper. He offered to help. She laughed and told him, "If you drop these, you're buying me new ones." He never dropped them. 2 years later, they married. Nathan had always loved that story. Simple. Steady. Ordinary. The kind of love people build houses around. But perhaps no love story begins on page 1. Some begin after heartbreak. Some after loss. And some after learning that life doesn't always go according to plan. He looked down and kept reading. James loved Mary deeply. Please know that. Your mother knew this too. Nathan's chest tightened. Because somehow, those words mattered. Children often carry an impossible burden. We want our parents to have been perfect. Not because perfection exists. Because it feels safer. Age teaches otherwise. Parents are not heroes or villains. They're people. And people are complicated. Claire quietly wiped her eyes. Not because of betrayal. Because of understanding. Sometimes understanding hurts more than anger. The letter continued. But there are some loves that become memories instead of marriages. And memories do not always disappear. Nathan stared at the sentence. His father had kept writing. Not because he wanted another life. Perhaps because some stories never receive proper endings. Life has a way of leaving unfinished chapters in otherwise beautiful books. Then he reached the final page. The handwriting had become shakier. Perhaps Grace had written it years later. Or perhaps with tears. There are emotions even ink cannot fully hide. After your father's death in 2002, Evelyn sent your mother a box. A box your mother never told anyone about. Nathan's heartbeat quickened. A box. Claire looked up immediately. Both of them remembered. After their father's funeral, their mother had spent an entire evening alone in the attic. She came down hours later carrying a small cedar box. When Nathan asked what it was, she simply smiled. Old memories. Then she placed it back upstairs. No one ever saw it again. At least, that's what they thought. Nathan read the final line on the page. And his breath caught. Because Grace had written. The box is still where your mother hid it. Behind the loose panel beneath the attic window. The box is still where your mother hid it. Behind the loose panel beneath the attic window. Nathan lowered the letter slowly. The words sat quietly between him and Claire. Heavy. Real. The kind of truth that changes the shape of old memories. His mother had hidden a box. Not lost it. Not forgotten it. Hidden it. There is a difference. People lose things accidentally. They hide things intentionally. An intention often carries a story. Claire stared at the letter. Her eyes had become glassy. Not from anger. From realization. After 14 years, grief had suddenly become active again. Loss has strange seasons. Sometimes it sleeps for years. Then one ordinary afternoon wakes it up. "Nathan," she whispered. "The attic." Her voice sounded smaller somehow. As if she had become a daughter again. Not a 51-year-old accountant with grandchildren of her own. Grief has a curious way of making children out of adults. Nathan looked toward the church. White roses framed the entrance. Guests still waited. The wedding planner stood near the doors, checking her watch. Inside waited Emily. Outside waited the past. And for the first time in his life, Nathan realized that the two were no longer separate things. "I've noticed something over the years, my friends. The older we get, the less our lives resemble straight lines. They become circles. The places we thought we had left behind somehow find their way back to us." Daniel walked over quietly. No jokes. No impatience. Only concern. The mark of a true friend isn't how loudly they celebrate your happiness. It's how gently they stand beside your confusion. "What now?" Daniel asked. Nathan looked down at the ring in his palm. Gold worn smooth by decades. His mother's warmth seemed to live inside it somehow. Memory often settles into objects long after people are gone. "I need to go home." The word surprised even him. Home. Not the house he shared with Emily. The old house. The one on Willow Creek Road. The house where his parents had spent 40 years. Where his mother had baked apple pies every Thanksgiving. Where his father sat on the porch swing every summer evening. The house Claire had inherited after their mother's passing. The same house neither sibling had been able to sell. Some homes become more than property. They become archives. Claire nodded slowly. As though she had already reached the same conclusion. "I'll drive." Nathan glanced toward the church one more time. The wedding. The guests. The music waiting to begin. He should have felt panic. Instead, he felt stillness. Not peace. But clarity. Life occasionally presents moments that demand honesty over convenience. Those moments are rarely easy. But they are often important. His phone vibrated. Emily. Again. This time he answered immediately. Her voice was calm. That alone nearly broke his heart. Love often sounds quiet when it's real. "Nathan?" He closed his eyes briefly. The church bells had stopped. Only wind remained. And leaves. Always leaves in October. "I need to tell you something." There was silence on the other end. Not fearful silence. Patient silence. The kind built through years of trust. Emily had always listened before reacting. Perhaps that was one reason he loved her. Sometimes character reveals itself in pauses. He explained everything. The ring. The letter. The hospital. His father's first love. The hidden box. Not quickly. Not perfectly. Truth rarely arrives in polished sentences. When he finished, Emily remained silent for several seconds. Then she asked quietly. "Is this something your mother wanted you to know?" Nathan looked at the ring. At the handwriting. At 14 years of waiting. "Yes." Her answer came softly. "Then go." No anger. No accusation. No ultimatum. Only understanding. "I've learned something about love, my friends. Love isn't always standing at the altar. Sometimes love is giving someone permission to face the past before building the future." Nathan swallowed hard. "Emily." She interrupted gently. "I'll still be here." Simple words. The kind that become foundations. He ended the call and looked at Daniel. His friend smiled faintly. She's a keeper. Nathan nodded. His mother would have liked Emily. Not because she was perfect. Because she was kind. And kindness has a way of surviving where many other things fail. An hour later, the three of them drove north along Willow Creek Road. The countryside glowed in shades of orange and gold. Indiana in October has always looked like memory. Fields. Old barns. Maple trees shedding their leaves. The familiar landscape of 1,000 childhood drives. Nathan sat quietly in the passenger seat. The ring rested in his jacket pocket. Every so often, his fingers touched it. Not to confirm it was there. To remind himself this was real. When they pulled into the driveway, the house stood exactly as he remembered. White siding. Green shutters. The porch swing still hanging near the front door. Claire had kept everything much the same. Some people preserve homes. Others preserve time. The attic stairs creaked beneath their feet. They always had. Nathan remembered climbing them as a child searching for Christmas decorations. His father's old fishing gear still sat near the back wall. Boxes of school papers. Photo albums. A rocking horse missing one wheel. Life leaves traces everywhere. Dust danced in the sunlight coming through the attic window. The same window. The loose panel beneath it. Nathan's heartbeat quickened. Claire knelt first. Her fingers traced the wooden boards. Then she stopped. One panel moved slightly. Not enough to notice unless someone knew. And now they did. People hide things because they hope they'll be found by the right person. At the right time. Claire carefully lifted the panel. A hollow space appeared beneath it. Inside sat a small cedar box. Worn. Beautiful. And waiting. Nathan recognized it instantly. The same box he had seen his mother carry upstairs after their father's funeral 22 years ago. His throat tightened. Some objects survive because they still have work left to do. The lid was closed. A brass clasp secured the front. And resting on top, folded neatly beneath the dust, was a second envelope. This one written in handwriting Nathan knew better than his own. His mother's. Across the front, it said only 4 words. For my children. Nathan stared at the familiar handwriting. His mother's handwriting. Even after 14 years, he recognized it immediately. Some things become part of us so deeply that time cannot erase them. A voice. A recipe. The way someone writes the letter M. Memory hides in ordinary places. And sometimes it waits quietly until we're ready to find it again. Dust floated through the afternoon light of the attic. The same attic where Nathan had once hidden Christmas presents for his own children. The same attic where his father stored fishing rods and old camping gear. The same attic where his mother had hidden a secret for 22 years. Life has a way of placing extraordinary truths in ordinary rooms. Claire's hands trembled slightly. Not from fear. From recognition. She reached out and touched the envelope. The paper had yellowed around the edges. Carefully preserved. Protected. As though their mother had known this day would eventually come. Parents prepare for futures they may never see. Sometimes that preparation takes the form of savings accounts. Sometimes recipes. And sometimes letters. Nathan carefully broke the seal. The sound was soft. Almost fragile. Like opening a door that had waited decades for someone to knock. Inside were several pages folded neatly. The scent of cedar lingered in the air. For a moment, Nathan was no longer 47 years old. He was 12 again. Standing in this attic while his mother searched for Christmas decorations. She had worn a green sweater that day. He remembered because she always wore it in December. Funny how memory chooses its own details. He unfolded the pages. His mother's handwriting stretched across them. Steady. Elegant. Familiar. And suddenly, she felt close again. Not in the way grief imagines. In the way love remembers. He began reading aloud. My dear Nathan and Claire. If you're reading this, then life has unfolded exactly as I hoped it wouldn't and exactly as I suspected it might. Claire closed her eyes. That sounded like their mother. Mary Carter had a way of holding two truths at once. Hope and realism. Joy and sorrow. Life teaches people that contradictions often live side by side. Nathan continued. There are some stories parents keep not because they wish to deceive their children, but because they wish to protect them from burdens that were never theirs to carry. The words settled gently. Not defensive. Not apologetic. Just honest. Honesty often sounds quieter than people expect. Nathan thought about his own life. About all the things parents hide. Financial worries. Health concerns. Private grief. Children grow up believing adults have answers. Age teaches otherwise. Most adults are simply learning as they go. I've learned something over the years, my friends. When parents keep secrets, they are not always hiding from their children. Sometimes they're trying to shield them. Whether they succeed is another matter entirely. Nathan read on. Your father loved me deeply. Never doubt that. His chest tightened. The sentence came first. Before explanations. Before history. Before old love stories. Mary Carter had been many things. Practical. Patient. Kind. But above all, she had always been fair. Fairness often reveals character more clearly than affection. Claire wiped her eyes. Not because she doubted. Because hearing it mattered. Children need reassurance no matter how old they become. Nathan continued. James and Evelyn loved each other when they were young. The war interrupted many things for many people. Their story was one of them. Nathan swallowed. War. Such a small word for something that changes generations. His father rarely spoke of Vietnam. But perhaps silence had spoken loudly enough. He remembered waking up as a child to find his father sitting alone in the kitchen after midnight. Coffee untouched. Staring at nothing. At least that's what Nathan had believed then. Now he wondered. Maybe memory isn't about changing the past. Maybe it's about finally seeing it clearly. The letter continued. When your father returned home, life had moved on. Sometimes life does that while we're busy surviving. Nathan stopped. His mother had always understood people. Even when they disappointed her. Especially then. Observation before judgment. Perhaps wisdom is simply learning that every person carries a story we cannot see. He read further. Evelyn eventually married another man. Your father married me. And for many years, life was good. Simple. Direct. No bitterness. No competition. Only truth. There is dignity in that. People often imagine mature love as dramatic. But mature love is usually quieter. It looks like shared grocery lists. Doctor appointments. Remembering how someone takes their coffee. Nathan thought about Emily. Still waiting. Still understanding. His chest tightened with gratitude. Love grows strongest in patience. Then he reached the next paragraph. And everything changed again. 23 years after our wedding, Evelyn became a widow. Nathan froze. Claire looked up. Both knew what that meant. Timelines matter. Not because they explain people. Because they explain choices. He kept reading. Your father received a letter from her in 1994. The first in decades. Nathan's hands trembled. He had been 18. Claire had just started college. The year their father spent several weekends helping an old army friend. Memory shifted. Like a picture coming into focus. Some truths don't change the past. They change our understanding of it. The letter continued. He showed me every letter she wrote. Nathan blinked. Every letter? Not hidden? Shared? The realization softened something inside him. Perhaps not every secret had been betrayal. Sometimes marriage is not the absence of difficult truths. Sometimes it's choosing honesty inside them. His mother wrote. Your father never lied to me. Not once. Nathan exhaled slowly. A breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Trust. After all these years, perhaps that was the real inheritance his parents had left behind. Then he reached the final page. The handwriting had become shakier. Softer. As though written near the end of a long life. And there, near the bottom, were the words that made his heart stop. There is one last truth you deserve to know. Evelyn wasn't your father's greatest love. I was. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is not being chosen first. It's being chosen every day afterward. But beneath those words, there was one final sentence. A sentence that changed everything once more. And there is someone you still haven't met. And there is someone you still haven't met. Nathan read the sentence twice. Then once more. The attic had grown quiet. Not silent. Old houses are never silent. They creak. They settle. They remember. Outside the small window, October sunlight painted the maple trees in shades of amber and gold. The same trees his father had planted 30 years earlier. Back then they were saplings. Now they stood taller than the roof. Funny how time works. Trees announce their growth. Families often don't. Claire leaned closer. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Who? A simple question. But some questions carry entire lifetimes behind them. Nathan looked down at the page again. His mother's handwriting had become shakier near the end. Not weak. Just older. The way all handwriting changes after enough years. Age leaves its signature on everything. He continued reading. You may already know her name. Or perhaps you've heard it only once and forgotten it. Her name is Sarah Harper. Harper. The same last name. Evelyn Harper. Nathan's chest tightened. Sarah Harper. The name stirred something distant. Not memory exactly. Recognition. The kind that arrives before understanding. Claire frowned slightly. I've heard that name. Nathan looked at her. So had he. Somewhere. Sometime. The human mind stores thousands of moments without telling us why. Only later do we discover their meaning. He read further. Sarah is Evelyn's daughter. But before your thoughts travel too far, let me say this clearly. She is not your father's child. Nathan exhaled. A breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Beside him, Claire closed her eyes briefly. Relief can be complicated. Sometimes it arrives carrying guilt. Because part of us fears what we might discover. And another part fears what that says about us. I've learned something after 67 years, my friends. People often assume the worst when facing uncertainty. Not because they're cruel. Because uncertainty asks our imagination to fill in the blanks. And imagination is rarely gentle. Nathan continued. Sarah was only 10 years old when her father died. Your father became her friend long before he became anything else. Nathan paused. Friend. Such a simple word. And yet some of life's most meaningful relationships begin there. He remembered his father volunteering at the community center every Saturday after retirement. Fixing shelves. Teaching boys to fish. Helping neighbors repair fences. James Carter had always been a man who quietly showed up. Not for recognition. just because someone needed help. Character reveals itself most clearly in ordinary acts repeated over time. The letter continued. Evelyn struggled after losing her husband. Your father and I discussed it many times. Loneliness can become very heavy after enough years. Nathan swallowed. Loneliness. Older people understand that word differently. Not as being alone, but as carrying memories with no one left to share them with. His mother had understood loneliness well. After his father passed in 2002, she lived alone for 8 years. Yet every Sunday afternoon, she still made enough lemonade for 2 glasses. Nathan remembered opening her refrigerator once. 2 glasses already prepared. She had smiled and said, "Old habits take their time leaving. Grief doesn't disappear. It simply learns new routines." He read on. Some people enter our lives for a season. Others remain in our hearts long after their season has passed. The wise among us learn not to be threatened by either. Nathan's eyes grew wet. That sounded exactly like his mother. Mary Carter never competed with the past. Perhaps because she understood that love is not a pie divided into smaller pieces. The heart expands. Parents learn this the moment they have a second child. Love multiplies. It rarely subtracts. Claire wiped her cheeks. Not because she was sad. Because she finally understood her parents as people. Not just mother and father. People. Age teaches us that understanding often replaces judgment. Nathan continued reading. After your father died, I stayed in touch with Evelyn and Sarah. Not because I had to. Because family is sometimes chosen as much as inherited. The sentence settled deeply. Family. Such a simple word. Yet no 2 people define it exactly the same way. Nathan thought about Emily. Not yet his wife. But already family in all the ways that mattered. He thought about Daniel downstairs. Waiting. Patiently. Friendship and family sometimes stand much closer together than we realize. Then he reached the next paragraph. And his breath caught. Sarah visited me every Christmas for 15 years. Nathan froze. Claire looked up sharply. Every Christmas? Impossible. Or perhaps not. Suddenly, memories shifted. The extra gift beneath the tree. The woman who visited after church one December. The handmade scarf his mother once received. As children, they notice events. Adults notice meaning. Memory is like that. It changes shape as we age. Nathan read further. You met her many times. Though you knew her by another name. His heartbeat quickened. Many times? No. That couldn't be. Could it? People think family secrets always hide in darkness. But often they sit quietly at Thanksgiving dinner while everyone passes mashed potatoes. The letter trembled in his hands. Dust drifted through the attic sunlight. The cedar box remained open beside him. The ring rested in his pocket. And downstairs, life continued. Cars passed. Dogs barked. The world remained ordinary. Truth rarely changes the world. It changes us. Nathan reached the final lines. His mother's handwriting had become unsteady. As though written during difficult days. Yet every word remained clear. Intentional. Loving. He read aloud. Sarah Harper became family long ago. You know her as Sarah Mitchell. Nathan stopped breathing. Sarah Mitchell. The name struck like lightning. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't a stranger. She wasn't a distant acquaintance. She wasn't a hidden chapter from his father's past. Sarah Mitchell was standing downstairs in the kitchen. Because she had been invited to the wedding. For years. As family. Sarah Mitchell. The name echoed through the attic. Not because it was unfamiliar. Because it wasn't. Some surprises come from strangers. The deepest ones come from people we've known all along. Nathan lowered the letter slowly. His hands trembled. Not violently. Just enough. Enough for age and memory to recognize what the heart was trying to understand. Sarah Mitchell. His mother's friend. The woman who had attended every Thanksgiving for nearly 15 years. The woman who sent handwritten birthday cards. The woman who brought peach cobbler every Easter. The woman everyone simply called Aunt Sarah. Though she wasn't anyone's aunt. At least, not by blood. Families have a curious habit of creating titles for people they love. Children do it naturally. Adults sometimes forget how wise children can be. Claire sat back against an old trunk. Her eyes were distant now. Searching through decades of memory. I remember her first Christmas, she whispered. Nathan did too. Or at least fragments of it. He had been 24. Recently married to his first wife. Their mother had invited a quiet woman with chestnut hair and kind eyes. Sarah. She had arrived carrying a pecan pie. Homemade. His mother introduced her simply. This is Sarah. Nothing more. No explanations. No history. Just Sarah. At the time, it had seemed ordinary. Age teaches us that some of life's most important introductions happen without fanfare. Nathan looked back at the letter. His mother's words waited patiently. Good writing often does. Like good people. He continued reading. You children always believed I was taking care of Sarah. The truth is, she was taking care of me too. Nathan stopped. His throat tightened. After his father died in 2002, loneliness had settled over Mary Carter quietly. Not dramatically. Loneliness rarely announces itself. It arrives in empty chairs. Silent kitchens. Half-finished conversations. Nathan remembered visiting his mother 6 months after the funeral. He had opened the cabinet to find 2 coffee mugs still sitting beside the sink. His father's blue mug. Her white one. Side by side. Unmoved. Some habits survive grief because they once carried love. His mother had smiled when he noticed. I suppose old routines take time. At the time, he hadn't understood. Now he did. A life shared for 37 years doesn't disappear with a funeral. It lingers. In drawers. Recipes. Closets. And quiet mornings. I've learned something after many years, my friends. Grief isn't the opposite of love. It's the proof that love was here. The deeper the love, the longer the echo. Nathan read further. Sarah lost her mother, Evelyn, only 3 days after I lost your father many years earlier. Grief introduced us before friendship did. Nathan blinked. 3 days. The same 3 days. Life has strange ways of arranging meetings. Not always joyful ones. Sometimes sorrow becomes a bridge between strangers. Claire wiped at her eyes. Not because the story was sad. Because it felt familiar. How many times had their mother visited Sarah over the years? How many lunches? Church services? Phone calls? The children had noticed. But never asked. Children often assume their parents' lives stop changing after a certain age. Age teaches the opposite. Even in our 60s and 70s, we continue becoming new versions of ourselves. The letter continued. Sarah carried guilt that never belonged to her. She feared she represented pain. She never did. Nathan paused. Guilt. Such a heavy thing. And often misplaced. People blame themselves for storms they never created. His mother understood that. She had spent 30 years teaching Sunday school. 40 years comforting neighbors. A lifetime reminding people to be kinder to themselves. He remembered being 16 and failing his driver's test. He had come home embarrassed. Ashamed. His mother simply handed him lemonade and said, "Failure is only dangerous when it convinces you to stop trying." Simple words. But some sentences become lifelong companions. Nathan looked around the attic. His father's old tackle box still sat in the corner. Dust covered it now. But memory did not. Life leaves objects behind. Love leaves lessons. He kept reading. "If you ever meet Sarah as adults rather than children, you'll see what I saw. Kindness." Nathan smiled through tears. That was his mother. She measured people differently. Not by wealth. Not by status. Not by perfection. By kindness. Because kindness survives where many things fail. He thought of Emily. Still waiting. Patiently. Gracefully. Without demands. His chest tightened. Perhaps his mother had seen this day long before he did. The letter neared its end. The handwriting had grown less steady now. The marks of illness. The marks of time. Yet every word remained clear. Intentional. A mother's final lesson. "When I gave Evelyn the ring, I wasn't giving away your father's memory. I was honoring it." Nathan closed his eyes. There it was. The answer. Not betrayal. Not hidden romance. Not deception. Compassion. His mother had understood something many people never learn. Love is not diminished by generosity. It grows. The ring had never been lost. It had been shared. Shared between two women connected by one man. Not as rivals. As survivors of the same story. Age has taught me something, my friends. The strongest people aren't those who hold tightly to everything they love. Sometimes they're the ones brave enough to let love become larger than themselves. Nathan turned to the final page. Only a few lines remained. The attic had grown darker. Late afternoon sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. Downstairs, life waited. The wedding. The future. Emily. And perhaps a new understanding of the past. Then Nathan read the final paragraph. And his breath caught. Because his mother had written. "If you're reading this on your wedding day, Nathan, then there is one final gift waiting downstairs. Sarah has been carrying it for years. If you're reading this on your wedding day, Nathan, then there is one final gift waiting downstairs. Sarah has been carrying it for years." Nathan lowered the letter slowly. The attic had fallen quiet. Not empty. Never empty. Old houses hold too many memories for that. The late afternoon sun filtered through the attic window, casting long beams across the wooden floor. Dust drifted in the light. The same dust his mother used to complain about every spring. She would climb these stairs with a broom in one hand and determination in the other. Some people leave behind furniture. Others leave behind habits. Mothers somehow leave behind both. Nathan folded the letter carefully. Not because paper tears easily. Because some words deserve gentle hands. Claire wiped her eyes. The cedar box sat open beside them. The ring rested in Nathan's palm. 14 years of questions had finally found their answers. Not dramatic answers. Human ones. Life often disappoints those looking for villains. More often, it reveals people doing the best they can with imperfect hearts. I've learned something after many years, my friends. When we're young, we search for heroes and villains. Age teaches us that most people are simply carrying invisible burdens. Some carry them gracefully. Others quietly. But nearly everyone carries something. Nathan stood slowly. The attic suddenly felt smaller. Or perhaps he had grown larger inside it. Grief does that sometimes. Not by making us stronger. By making us softer. And softness, contrary to what many believe, is not weakness. It is understanding. "Let's go downstairs," Claire whispered. Her voice had changed. Lighter somehow. Not because grief had ended. Grief doesn't end. It changes shape. They descended the attic stairs one careful step at a time. The house smelled faintly of cedar and old books. The same way it always had. Memory often arrives through scent before anything else. As they reached the kitchen, Nathan stopped. Sarah Mitchell sat quietly at the table. A small woman in her early 70s. Silver hair tucked neatly behind one ear. The same gentle eyes he had known his entire life. Aunt Sarah. The woman who brought pecan pie every Thanksgiving. The woman who sent birthday cards with $5 bills tucked inside when he was a child. The woman who sat beside his mother every Christmas Eve after his father died. She looked up. And somehow, she already knew. Age teaches people to recognize certain expressions. Especially those born from truth. Daniel stood nearby. The woman from the church bench sat quietly in the living room. No one spoke. Some moments deserve silence before words. Sarah looked at Nathan. Then at the ring. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Not surprise. Recognition. As though she had been waiting for this moment longer than anyone realized. Slowly, she reached into her purse. An old leather purse. Worn soft with time. People carry some things until they become part of them. From inside, she removed a small envelope. Cream-colored. Carefully preserved. Nathan's breath caught. His mother's handwriting again. Sarah held it out with trembling hands. Mary asked me to give this to you on your wedding day. Her voice broke softly. Only if you were ready. Ready. Funny word. Life rarely tells us when we're ready. Sometimes readiness arrives only after the truth. Nathan took the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Old. Slightly faded. His father stood smiling beside Evelyn Harper. Young. Perhaps 20 years old. Standing beneath an oak tree somewhere in Martinsville. And between them, a little girl. 8 or 9 years old. Sarah. On the back of the photograph, in his mother's handwriting, were 7 simple words. Love grows larger when we share it. Nathan stared at the photo. Then at Sarah. Suddenly, memories rearranged themselves. The extra place setting at Christmas. His mother's phone calls. The birthday card signed. Love, Aunt Sarah. She had never been a secret. She had been family all along. Just not in the way he understood. Family is a curious thing. Sometimes we're born into it. Sometimes we build it. And sometimes we inherit people through kindness. Sarah wiped her eyes. Your mother saved me. Nathan looked up. She smiled softly. The kind of smile people wear when speaking about someone they miss every day. After my mother passed, I didn't have anyone left. Her voice trembled. But Mary invited me to Christmas. She laughed quietly through tears. Then Easter. Another smile. Then every Sunday dinner. Nathan swallowed hard. That sounded exactly like his mother. Mary Carter never believed anyone should eat alone. Not on holidays. Not ever. Sarah folded her hands. She used to tell me that family isn't always about blood. Her eyes drifted toward the ring. It's about who keeps setting a place for you at the table. The room fell quiet. Because everyone there knew. Mary Carter had done exactly that. For decades. Nathan thought of his mother. The yellow kitchen curtains. The cookie jar. The Christmas cards. The ring. All those years, he believed the ring had been lost. But it hadn't. It had been carrying love where love was needed most. Sometimes what we call loss is simply kindness traveling farther than we expected. Outside, the late afternoon sun had begun to fade. The church still waited. Emily still waited. And suddenly Nathan understood something. This day had never been interrupted. It had been completed. He drove back to the church just before sunset. The guests remained. Some had gone for coffee. Others sat quietly talking. No one complained. Life has a way of teaching patience on important days. Emily stood near the altar. Still wearing her white dress. Still waiting. Not angry. Just present. Nathan walked toward her. The ring rested safely in his pocket. His mother's ring. Home at last. He took Emily's hands. No speeches. No grand explanations. Only truth. And truth, when spoken with love, rarely needs many words. That evening, as the church bells rang and vows were exchanged, Nathan glanced toward the front pew. Sarah sat beside Claire. Daniel smiled nearby. And resting quietly in Emily's bouquet, wrapped in blue ribbon, was his mother's ring. Not as a symbol of the past, but as a reminder that love does not shrink when shared. It grows. Hello, my friends. This is Eleanor Brooks. And after 67 years, I've learned something about families. The people who change our lives are not always the ones we expect. Sometimes they are the people who quietly remain. Who keep showing up. Who keep setting an extra plate at the table. Because in the end, family isn't only about who we come from. Sometimes it's about who we make room for. And perhaps that's the real inheritance we leave behind. Not money. Not jewelry. But kindness that continues long after we're gone.